About 6 months before I went to prison, I planned to go to trial. And 3 weeks before my trial, I had a full-on mental breakdown. I was so scared and overwhelmed at the thought of leaving my children, and I quit speaking. So the government took me into custody for a mental evaluation. They took me to a county jail, and I was left in a cell by myself for 10 days. And I was very vulnerable and scared. It wasn't good. They took my clothes, and I felt like they were trying to kill me. It was just terrifying. 3 months later, I pled guilty, and I got out of those conditions, and I had really bad PTSD. And then 6 months later, I went to prison. And the way that I handled that, a lot of it was prayer and support, but also it was routine, like finding my place where I was. And so I spent a year in Dublin, California, and I started to feel safe there, right? I had my room, my routine. And then I was taken to the SHU, which is an isolation cell, for 3 weeks, and then transferred to all different facilities and taken to Minnesota. And by this time, again, I'm totally traumatized, and I got to find my place again. When I got to Minnesota, I just sat under a tree every time they'd let us out, and I cried. And I just poured my heart out. My heart was so broken, and I had all this pain. And I remember one day, one of my coworkers walked out and sat under the tree with me. She said, "Hey, Louder, I know you're struggling. I can tell." She said, "I don't want you to think you're alone. We're here with you, and we're praying for you." She said, "You're in a good place to help and support others. Embrace that. I know it feels like a death right now." She goes, "Allow yourself to walk through that pain." Well, that day I was sitting in the commissary waiting to get some stuff, my groceries, and I have my headphones in, and all of a sudden I remembered that experience in the county jail, and I remembered it differently. Instead of that fear of my children leaving my children, I imagined my daughter coming in and grabbing my hand, my little one. She was 7. "Mom, it's okay. Come with us. You're free." And I remember walking out of that cell with her. And later that evening, I went into the chow hall, and I was just sitting there thinking about all the experiences I'd had that day. And this Hispanic woman walks by, and she didn't speak great English, and she said, "Hi, friend, you're glowing." And I said, "Oh, nice to meet you." And she goes, "God will bless you when you leave prison because you're here for us." Well, it didn't surprise me because people say strange things all the time in prison. But I remember going home that night and sleeping, and the next morning I got up and I went out and I sat under my tree and I said this. I said, "God, I offer myself to thee. Please, I need to be healed. I surrender all that I am to thee." And from that day on, I was free.